Eric, thank you so much for taking a few minutes. We really appreciate it. Perhaps you could start off by just giving us a little background about yourself and the organization, and I'll start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Eric Wixom's CEO and co-founder of a company called Wixcorp. It's a patient engagement and experience company. And so I've been in healthcare my entire career, everything from private practice to mergers and acquisitions and consulting and kind of everything in between. And while I was doing that, I really wanted to better understand how a dollar passes through the healthcare system, right? I mean, you figure there's a physician signature on the front end authorizing it, and it goes through kind of this black box of revenue cycle and then drops into a bank account. I just wanted to understand that process a little bit more. So as I was out doing consulting jobs, I talked to every patient financial advocate and VP of finance and CFO, anything in between around what's their job? What is it that they do? And I came away with a couple of realizations. One, nobody really gets it. It's too complicated. I mean, you can get the high level, but really it's just too much. But then two, and this was about a decade ago, patients were making up a lot more of that revenue mix. Historically, it was always insurance companies paying 95% of the revenues and patients 85%. So if they paid you, that was great, but if it didn't, you could still operate. But employers and insurers have kind of hit that saturation point. They're not going to pay more for the rising costs of care, and so you have to offshoot that somewhere, and so that's falling on the patient now. And so patients now make up 20, 30% of revenue for a health system. So we're really moving from systemically from wholesale to retail, and we're just not equipped to do that.
And then only fee-for-service to value-based care too changed that a lot as well.
Significantly, all right, between the Accountable Care Act, all these kind of forces coming together at the same time, creating this. And so health systems are struggling with how do we engage our patients effectively and help them understand and pay their bills and get through all of that.
It's a really heavily crowded space in your neck of the woods trying to serve those hospitals, right? Mm-hmm. So what was it that, you're a young company. What was it that interested you in Connex when we first had a conversation?
Yeah, so as a young company, we don't have that brand awareness, right? And so when we're talking with an institution around taking over their patient engagement, meaning their estimators and scheduling and registration and bill payment and all these different components, that's a really high trust relationship, right? Because it's not just a quick utility vendor, I need to send a text or something. It's really that systemic. How do I communicate, engage with my patients? And so as a new entrant into that space without that brand awareness in institutions, they won't even know to talk to me, right? And so being able to connect with those decision makers and be able to say, hey, I see these needs. Here's an organization that can meet those needs. The brand then isn't there. You can become that trusted referral partner and to connect us with them. And so that's really what attracted us initially to Connex.
Oh, awesome. What was so once you made that decision, you were going to go through discovery. And as a younger company, that brand recognition, that positioning and messaging is critical. Right? Why are they going to make a decision to work with you as set against everybody else in your space? Maybe you could talk to how the team worked with you through that discovery and what that process was like.
Yeah, it was really helpful to sit down and interview with the Connex team, because they're getting from the partner side or the member side, right? Here's the needs and here's the things they're struggling with. So to be able to have them connect with us and try to poke holes into, okay, what do you do? What don't you do? How does this all kind of come together? What makes you unique in that space? What's that value proposition of helping train your teams around how to talk about us? Because obviously every company has its own culture, its own way of doing things. So trying to distill that down into something that you can present. Then also understanding it, are the tools and resources and things that we're bringing to bear in the market, does that make sense with what your members are needing? And if there's a connection there or not. And then if there is, well, what does that look like, and how do we phrase that and bring it in so that it's meaningful to them?
Yeah. And it really is critical in finding opportunity, right? Because then it is incumbent upon us to be able to distill that and provide enough value to a hospital executive on the other side where they're going to say, yes, I see that. So maybe you can talk about the preparation that comes from there with the business intelligence that we're providing.
Yeah, so that business intelligence is really helpful for a couple of reasons. Number one, it saves a lot of the first impression conversations, right? If I'm just meeting somebody for the first time, often the questions around who are you, what do you do, tell me about your organization and your role with it and how that comes together, and you'll spend 10 or 15 minutes just kind of understanding there. It's nice having that because we can cut that down so that instead of tons of questions, it's more of the general, I want to just get to know you because I already understand your role within the organization and the needs, and we can really get to spend more time meeting individuals and finding and asking those questions more around what are those needs that you're trying to fill, and letting them articulate that and jumping right into more of the needs matching relationship.
And we do that a few ways. We do that virtually throughout Nadir so that it's really good for your schedules, although it's still difficult dealing with a busy senior executive here and a founder owner.
Yeah.
And then there's opportunity here at Connexion. Maybe you can share what your experience has been like. There's still nothing, even though we become more of a virtual world, there's still nothing like sitting and being able to do this.
Absolutely, right. I mean, again, it's a high trust relationship.
Yep.
And so being able to have that FaceTime with an individual and sit down and get to know them human and have those conversations and build that trust is invaluable. And being able to also sit in there's a lot within those think tank conversations, right, where we're talking about industry needs and industry concerns, and it becomes much less of a buyer-seller arrangement, and it's much more of a collaborative, how do we as an industry address the issues that we're facing together? And if that's something we can help each other with, great, but if not, we can at least knowledge share best practices, because we're all in this together of how do we serve our patients and make it financially viable.
So of the opportunities, so it's a younger relationship. We've been working together for about a year now.
Yeah, almost 2 now.
Is it 2 years now?
Yeah, time realized when we got
it is. So wow, we started right at the beginning. That's right. So maybe you could talk about what the outcomes have been from some of those opportunities.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I don't know if we have a normal story and experience there or not. I know for us, we had a couple of early connections and able to chat with folks. I think our very first one actually was within an organization that we just recently have signed up. But it took 2 years to work through, again, because it's such a high trust, relationship based connection. And so for us, we've had many different interviews with different individuals and working through, and like anything, some will be of value, some are a good fit, some just aren't for what they're looking for at the time, which is fine. The opportunity to meet with them has been really good. And we found that as we've gotten those conversations and moved through, even if the timing's not quite right, when the timing is right, I've been really impressed that the first call was back to Connex for those members of, hey, the timing is now right, I do need some help. Who can we connect with, or is that group still here? And being able to reconnect those.
Going back to your initial conversation, and I have another partner who is in the same boat, and we did an interview with them as well, where their first conversation was a win, but the sales cycles, and especially in healthcare, there can be a 2-year long sales cycles.
Yeah.
So it does take patience. It takes relationship, right? Not transactional, but something where we're staying in communication. The follow-up on the backside, hey, have you heard from, such and such executive? Maybe you didn't talk to that part of the Connex relationship.
Yeah, it's funny. Working with the members, often it feels like they're ghosting you, right? Because there's so much, okay, well, we'll follow up at this point, and then things get canceled and rescheduled, and there's that anxiety that builds up as an organization of, oh man, are they just not interested, or where are they at? And it can be challenging. And when you send those follow-up emails, they go unanswered. And we know internally, they're busy, they've got lots of stuff going on. It's not that they're running around and it's okay. But there's that in the back of your head, oh my gosh, it's that, right? And so it has actually been really nice having that connection with Connex, where you have those regular touch bases where you're able to connect and then give that feedback of, if they got busy, make this thing happen. They're still at this point and working on these things. Or the feedback of, yeah, it wasn't the right fit. Like they're looking for this and you're offering this and it just wasn't quite right. Great. Now I know not to keep bugging them. Right now I know that it's okay and we can just move forward. And so having that channel communication, it does a couple of things. One, it alleviates the anxiety in that sales process a little bit, right? But I think it also really underlines that trusted relationship that you have with your members and that they feel comfortable having those candid conversations and those continual communication.
You know, we all sit back in life, whether it's a relationship with a loved one or just that relationship with yourself. And boy, I'd like to give advice to younger me, not that I know, and I can sit on the other side of life 20 years later, 30 years later and say, just, you know, what would that advice be to, you know, Eric, 2 years ago, but right at, you know, when you started the relationship with Connex, what counsel would you give?
I think maybe patience. I think anytime you sign up with an organization, everybody's excited because you've gone through that kind of relationship building process of here's the services you're going to be providing and here's the business relationship between those and how it's all going to come together. And so there's kind of that excitement of, okay, we signed up the contract, this is going to be great and everything's going to be fantastic and we're just going to get moving. And then it doesn't.
Yeah.
And needing that perspective, right, of it takes time and it'll come through and it'll work out, but you have to let it work its process. And it's just that kind of that patience working through. And I'm sure it's the same on your side. Okay, we've got this new site, we need to connect them, we need to pull it all together, and just acknowledging the time that it takes of really building those meaningful connections.
It's a marriage. Yeah, I know, you ebb and you flow, you're trying to figure it out. It's a dance when you first start, you know, and you're right, it's exciting, it's a new relationship. They have great expectations and hopes. So I know one thing, we're incredibly grateful for the relationship we've had. I've enjoyed getting to spend some time with you personally as well. And now, you know, a new relationship is built. So those are the things that are foundational. So we're just super grateful for you, Eric. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And likewise.